Awesome. We are on. Hey, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
It's Jay and Monica, and welcome to our third ever Fab Fit local hangout, Google local hangout, hosted by Scott Solari of Viral Marketing, and we are very, very excited for this third show. In case you've been following along a little bit, we are now going to attempt to do this twice a month, the first and third Wednesdays of every month. We're going to be always, whenever they can be, joined by Dr. Brett Osborn and Dr. Leonard Farber, who, of course, were gracious enough to join us on our last show in December. Just so you guys are aware, most of the topics that we'll be discussing, and it's a wide variety of topics, but anti-aging, nutritional supplementation, training, both cardiovascular or endurance training, as Dr. Osborn likes to call it, weight training, hormone optimization, including testosterone replacement therapy. I mean, really, any of these topics are on the table. And
even mindset.
And open for discussion. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that Monica is really good with, which is mindset, empowerment, personal growth and development. So with that said, Dr. Osborn has not joined us yet.
For some reason, patients seem to need their doctors. I have no idea why.
He's running behind a little bit, but you know, let's go ahead and definitely start and talk. And I think that I'll let Scott start hosting and doing what he does best. But you know, topics today are a little bit about nutritional supplementation and anti-aging. Before we actually start, I want to tell everybody that we're giving away a free chapter from Dr. Osborn's book, Get Serious. All they have to do is go to our website, which is fabfitover40.com/supplements, and you can get a free chapter actually on Dr. Osborn's recommended supplements by just going there and just clicking on Give Me the Chapter, free chapter. So obviously we encourage you to buy his book, which will also be located on that page. You can just go right to Amazon and buy his book, but in case you want to get a little bit more in-depth without having to purchase it, you know, just download the chapter on supplements. Monica and I literally live by that supplement protocol, and we swear by it. So there you have it.
There you go. And here's Scott.
Hey. Oh my God. All right. And we're gonna update the maybe the page at the end with the links. So the Google Plus page, so people can jump on and grab that stuff too. So we got a lot to cover, and there's always a lot to cover on this subject. I mean, it's never ending, but I think, you know, you laid out some questions, and I think maybe starting with talk about how to remain visibly lean year-round. So, I mean, God, where to even begin with that? Where to even start?
You want to start?
More scientific, let's see.
Okay. Well, it really comes down to, you know, if you're a guy or a gal, your age, the amount of time you've been you've been training, whether it's, you know, weights, cardiovascular, endurance exercise. But I think, and again, you know, it depends on your age. But if you're, let's say, the average 40-year-old guy or girl, you have a very busy professional life. Hey, there he is, Dr. Brett.
Dr. Brett, the patients let you go.
How are you guys?
How are you?
It looks dark here.
It's very dark. We can't see you.
Your identity.
I'm trying to hide. Hold on a second here.
No worries.
Hey,
so anyway, hold on. Just want to keep going.
Mystery.
Just want to keep going. So Dr. Brett, we're talking about. We just really asked the first question. How do you remain? It's not just for you personally, but as anybody. How do you remain visibly lean year-round? Like, what goes into staying lean year-round? And I was just about to jump into, obviously the diet components, but maybe you can pick up on that question. Like, what would your recommendations be for someone to remain, visibly lean year-round?
So here's first and foremost, at least in my opinion, the first thing that one needs to do in order to maintain a fairly lean physique year-round is have a good sense of body mindfulness. So you need to know your body very, very well. And what I mean by that, I would say that the most important thing in that context is to know how carbohydrate sensitive you are, because what ultimately one's leanness depends upon, I would say that the primary factor that one's leanness depends upon is what their circulating insulin level is at any given time. And there are various ways to modulate as you are well aware of, your insulin levels. You can do it naturally with by making sure that your carbohydrate intake, your simple carbohydrate intake, is relatively low. It's going to show your body a low insulin signal. Or, and this is what I do, I not only use that method, which is sort of a standard, and I'll use the word diet, and I don't like that word. That's sort of the standard MO of diets, is just to keep your simple carbohydrate intake very, very low. By virtue of that, show your body a low insulin signal. Or you can use drugs like metformin, which do the exact same thing. They're going to lower your basal insulin levels, put you closer, if not into a relatively fasted state, which is a state in which you are what's called lipolytic. So you're fat burning most of the time as your fuel preference, as opposed to not doing so. So metformin, I always liken it to just putting your physiology, your metabolism, closer to that of a starving individual. And it allows you to, and this is just reality, it allows you to cheat, if you will, on your diet and still maintain a relatively lean physique. But again, in a circuitous way of answering your question, you have to first and foremost know how carbohydrate sensitive you are. That said, secondary to that would be obviously to stack on as much muscle as you possibly can, as opposed to running around thinking that it's the correct thing. That the correct thing to do is do, is do all this endurance work, which has fat burning effects, as we all know, but far less so than that type of work coupled with a muscular physique, because the muscle is, I would call it, very metabolically expensive tissue, and will burn fat very, 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 very much so, in addition to burning glucose. But preferentially, in its rested state, your muscle is going to be burning your fat stores, both stores of fat from within the muscle itself, so the intramuscular fat, as well as calling upon fat storage from elsewhere in the body, and utilizing that as substrate for ATP production. So in other words, in order to maintain itself, it's going to be calling upon the fat stores of the body, not just within those within the muscle itself locally. So there are a lot of different ways that you can maintain a lean physique. It's actually easier than most people think. You don't necessarily have to turn this into too much of a science project. You just need to have some basic understanding of what ultimately drives the fat burning process. Hey, Leonard.
Hey. Leonard, what's up, my brother?
How you doing, man? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you perfect. How are you? Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everyone.
So doctor, so we're right in the middle of it, so just you can pick up, but Dr. Osborn was just answering the first question that we have really today that we want to discuss is how do you maintain a relatively lean physique year-round, and his answer was a combination of, putting muscle mass on to become much more metabolically efficient, burn more calories at rest because you have more muscle, and then he also discussed utilizing metformin to lower resting blood glucose. So
know your carbohydrates.
And also obviously understand your carbohydrate sensitivity.
So I got a question, Dr. Osborn. So for people that aren't 100% on top of their health and fitness, that are someone maybe like me, that I work out here and there and I try to eat healthy, but I don't really understand what I should or shouldn't be eating, how carbs really affect my diet, exactly what supplements I should be taking. Where do I start? Because I feel like most people are in a category like I'm in, where there's some weight I can lose and I can definitely work out better and eat better, but I'm just doing it arbitrarily. I'm not based on a million different things I'm hearing all the time all over the internet or media or whatever, and I'm not 100% sure exactly what I should be doing for me because my body's different. Right. So where do I even start?
So that's a very good question, and one that I'm called upon to answer all the time. The first thing that you have to do is you have to define what your goals are. So if your goals are to become leaner, and that's the majority of us have that as a goal, you need to take steps to do what you can to shed that fat. With the understanding in mind that you can't really do both concomitantly. So your body is either, your metabolism or your physiology is either set in an anabolic state or a catabolic state. If you're going to try to maintain a lean physique or shed body fat, what you're going to need to do is, in addition to working out, and I mean working out, so strength training and trying to put that muscle on your body, you're going to have to make every effort to, despite the fact that your muscle is really craving those carbohydrates, you're going to have to try to get your caloric intake, maintain your caloric intake in order to be able to recover those muscles, but your calories are not going to be coming from the simple carbohydrates that your muscles are going to be craving. You do need carbohydrates, you do need insulin to recover from workouts, and this balance that I'm talking about is extremely difficult, and this is why bodybuilders don't ride that fine line year-round. They basically become heavy, okay, with both fat and muscle in an anabolic state, because when you're anabolic, you're putting on both fat and muscle, not just muscle, despite what people may believe. And then they use the pre-contest time period to basically go on an Atkins diet, if you will, and they're showing their bodies very, very low insulin. During that time, they're losing both fat and muscle. And the fine line that they ride is, how am I going to be able to maintain as much muscle as possible and lose maximal amount of fat to the point where they're getting down to 1% or 2% body fat, or some people even less. Some of the bodybuilders even less. That's a very, very difficult thing, and a lot of bodybuilders, as I'm sure you've heard, screw it up. Okay, but that doesn't apply to the average individual. What I usually tell, because the average individual is not a professional bodybuilder, so what I usually tell my patients to do is try to get to the point with your physique where you're happy with how much fat you have on your body. In other words, strive for that 32-inch waist or the 31-inch waist, whatever it is, the 30-inch waist, or whatever you want to do, and then worry about thereafter stacking that muscle on. You can't do both. What you can do, though, as I had said, is you can train, you can get your calories predominantly from protein, fat, and give yourself a little bit of carbohydrates. So 100 or 150 grams a day is what I usually tell patients to start out with, independent of their weight. Okay, and that's going to put them closer and closer to that fasted state. They're not going to be amassing muscle at that time, I can tell you. They're actually going to be getting thinner. Okay, and some of them will even complain that they're losing a little bit of muscle. You know what? That's okay, because ultimately they're going to sort of switch gears when they reach their target body fat level, and then we'll talk. I'll have another conversation with them about how to carefully put on muscle without adding too much fat. So if you're running around, and I can only see your torso, you're a talking head like I'm a talking head. Okay, if you're running around with excess body fat around your waist, and a lot of males are, and you want to get rid of it, okay, don't want to do is you don't want to go to the gym, okay, and then come home and then have a product like Gainer's Fuel, which is filled with sugar, and have 3,000 calories at 8 o'clock at night. And that's a mistake that everybody makes, okay, and it's not going to be conducive to fat loss, and you're never going to reach your goals. And that's a very, very, very common mistake. What I usually tell my patients is this. The individuals that want to lose fat, train, okay, like you train, okay, make sure that you're getting adequate calories, and it's easy to figure out where you should be. You can look at any of these BMR calculators, basal metabolic rate calculators. You figure out where you're supposed to be, and make your caloric, and make your carbohydrate intake, just set it at 150 grams, okay? If you happen to be very, very carbohydrate sensitive, set it at 100 grams, okay, of vegetable carbohydrates, not simple carbohydrates, and get the rest of your BMR from protein and fat. And don't be worried about, don't concern yourself with eating fat. You want to eat the good fats, so the olive oil, the flaxseed, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, you can eat almonds, you can eat walnuts, you can get your fats from there. Those are calorically dense foods, so you can actually get a lot of calories and maintain your body and your muscle mass through those types of calories, and not worry about generating too much of an insulin signal, because those foods do not generate insulin signals of significance. Protein does generate an insulin signal, but it's of different morphology, if you will, than eating a simple sugar. So it's easy, okay? So let's go over it again. Here are my rules. No eating after 7 o'clock at night, okay, unless you're training at 6 o'clock, which I wouldn't recommend doing, okay? No eating after 7 o'clock at night, lots and lots of water, okay? I want you to eat a gram of protein per pound of body weight, a gram of protein per pound. So if you weigh 180 pounds, you eat 180 grams of protein, okay? You're going to start out with 150 grams of carbohydrates, unless you happen to be very, very carbohydrate sensitive, in which case you should start at 100, okay? And then you fill the rest of your calories with fat. Okay, how do you know what your total caloric intake should be? You use a BMR calculator. And what I usually tell my patients to do, if they're trying to lose fat, okay, I usually tell them to eat basically at their sedentary BMR. So say, as an example, you weigh 180 pounds and your BMR is 1,800 or whatever it is, okay? Eat 1,800 calories. You're going to weight train, you're going to burn, let's say, 300-400 calories, okay? That's going to create a little bit of a caloric deficit, okay? And all you're going to do is lean out. I promise you. And you're not going to amass a lot of muscle. That's okay. But you will uncover muscle, okay? And
I have a question, and this could be for either Dr. Farber or for you, Dr. Osborn. Most people, like me, don't measure their food. We don't check the BMR. We don't have a calculator. We don't have any of these things.
Yeah, you have me.
I have you, but let's say before Jay.
Monica,
I didn't have a Jay come all my life. So, like, what's a good way to more or less be able to measure? Like, you're saying, 150 grams of vegetable carbs. Like, what's a good way to measure? Is it a handful of broccoli? Like, what's an easy way? Because most people aren't going to get, they're not going to weigh their meat. They're not going to do all these things.
No, and that's a great question, Monica. And here's the deal. For those individuals that are having problems, you don't need to. You're in great shape, and I'm sure you're an instinctive eater like I am. Okay, so forget about that. We may be a little bit different. Okay, we know ourselves very, very well. But individuals that are really, really trying to lose fat and have had difficulties in the past, okay, and this is one of the premises of the book, you need to become very, very serious about understanding your physiology, your body. You can't just, one size does not fit all. You can't just go on this diet willy-nilly and expect everything to work. You have to trial and error things, okay? But the first thing that you need to do is you need to, in the beginning, you need to establish, let's say, 10 foods that you like, okay, in the carbohydrate and the fat category, okay, in total. And you need to get a book, a guidebook, and you need to figure out, and if it means weighing the food for the first month, so that you understand exactly where you need to be, then it's going to take a month's worth of work, and then you'll be set forever. So it's a good question, but as an example, if I'm trying to lean myself out for photos, okay, as an example, not that I don't run around pretty lean, I do, but if I want to get myself extra lean, I am looking at every single food label. I know exactly how much I have to eat of this and of that. And that's the way I do it, because if I want to get myself to, if I want to trim back my carbohydrates as I'm getting closer and closer, okay, which is again what bodybuilders do, they're weighing their food. They know, okay, 150 grams today, 125 tomorrow, 100 grams, and they know exactly where those carbohydrates are coming from. And it does take a little bit of work and study in the beginning, but once you sort of figure it out and you get the feel for it, then that's it. I would know things like, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know that a chicken breast, an average chicken breast, is 30 to 35 grams of protein. We all know this stuff. The people that live this lifestyle, we know that.
I depend on Jay too much.
Well, I think that both Scott and Monica's questions tie together very well for the average person who doesn't understand this whole process, because we all live that life. You know, I weigh my food and I know the amount of carbs I need to have and protein. But if I take Scott's question as the prototypical male question, how do I do this? I think Jay's answer kind of alludes to one very important point, in that it does require some effort. Everybody wants this kind of like, just give it to me in 5 steps and I'll do it. Well, the 5 steps include learning in great detail. And you know, when we set goals for ourselves, whether they're business-wise, personally, relationships, we don't say, okay, you know what, I'm going to plan it out tonight and I'll have it done tomorrow and I don't have to put any effort into it. And I think once you accept the fact that this is for a lifestyle change, and you have to embrace it and say, okay, I need to learn these facts, then you can embark. And yes, we can give you the general rules, and I think Brett did a great job summarizing it. But in that summary, it's implicit. You have to learn the details of it. At some point, and I like his idea, the first month, learn what weighing things amount to. I kind of stick to the adage that, yes, your fist size is about a serving size. Well, you know, I'm not going to do a fistful of mashed potatoes. That kind of implies my protein portion. And then you need to understand what are good carbs, what glycemic index means. All these things we're talking about, they have a lot of relevance to people who already understand the concepts. But if you're first listening or tuning in saying, okay, I'm 40 pounds overweight, I want to start tomorrow, you have to know the sites to go to. Don't just go to like bodybuilding.com and say, oh, I'm going to follow this. I think that one Jay and Monica's site is a great starting reference, and I look at it every day, and I refer so many people to it who just don't really understand, and it's a great starting point. And the second thing is, as you listen to Brett talk, if you're really ready to embrace that, you need to see a physician. At some point, you need to meet with somebody who is going to give you the tools to learn it. And that's usually when you say, I'm ready to get serious. So it's kind of funny or ironic that is the title of his book, but that's really what it takes. At some point, we get serious. When we graduate from college or graduate school or whatever we're doing, and we want to pick the best career choice, we get very serious about it. We don't go half-ass into a job, right? We don't say, you know what, maybe I'll dabble a little bit in medicine and see how that works out for me. It's the same thing with your physique and your training and your nutrition. And actually, if you make that a priority, everything else kind of falls into place. So I think if you're the common person who doesn't know this stuff, you need to understand you have to learn, you have to become educated, and it isn't just picking the right sites, it's picking a site, going to a physician, and I think that's the value of really having Brett in on this, is because he takes patients on and he teaches them.
Right. And just to kind of give you a little insight too, because what I realized as far as how I was in the past was I was so busy, and it's like every time someone told me to weigh something, I would look at it and go like, are you serious? I'm not going to sit here and weigh my food and get ready. But what I hear you saying is that it comes down to how serious you want to be about your health and about how you look. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, real quick before you guys answer, both your answers were awesome. Thank you. As Dr. Farber just said, you can go to our site, fabfitover40.com. You can also go to Dr. Brett Osborn's site. It's just drbretosborn.com. We've got tons of information on both sites. We did an article about 6 months ago that has been highly trafficked. It's actually called Carbs You Should Eat. It has an absolute immense breakdown, like to the letter, of every type of carbohydrate based on whether it's starchy, whether it's green. It has, caloric content or density of everything. It's a great article to start, whether you know nothing about nutrition or you're a master. But again, I think going back to what they were saying, you really have to do your homework. You have to take this serious, just like Dr. Farber just said about this is a job. If you're going to lean out, Scott, or anybody for that matter that wants to lose body fat, you have to take this serious. And getting back to what Monica said, you can go on Amazon.com and you can buy a food scale for $20, okay? And you can have it sent right to your house, and you can measure, you know, caloric portions of whatever it is. It's not hard, and as Dr. Osborn said, and rather well, for 1 month, you're going to have to do some work. But after 1 month, you're not going to have to weigh your food out, because you're going to know, based on weighing it out for 1 month and doing all the homework, that, you know, what is relevant from a protein, carbohydrate, or fat standpoint of like what you need to eat and what portion size.
Yeah, I like what Dr. Farber had to say as well, because if you're going to do anything, whether it's a job, a relationship, anything is going to require effort. And if you want to have great health and a great physique, then that's going to require effort. Absolutely.
And then when it pays off, when you see the results and you're happy, you always look back and say, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's always that new thing, and we should look at it as a challenge every step of the way, because you're doing it for your own betterment. So I just tell people, embrace it, because if you look at it as something that's going to help you, it's not really work. It's just what you need to do to get there.
It's all perspective, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Scott, you want to go ahead and grab the next point?
Yeah, no, awesome. I mean, you guys couldn't have answered the question better. I think, you know, I appreciate it. That's really good. And a lot of this stuff I'm trying to personally implement in my life, so it works out for me too. Great.
Great news, Scott. You can replay this hangout.
I know. Well, I might be getting on the phone with Dr. Osborn, just hire him because I'm clearly don't know what I'm doing. But I guess I was going to lead into, and we kind of talked about the food element. Now let's talk about the exercise element a little bit in some of the training. If you're to a point where you're starting to, you want to stay lean, but you also want to build muscle, you know, what things are you looking to do essentially, maybe in the gym? So
real quick, I want Dr. Osborn to answer this, but let me just jump in. You guys have to buy his book, Get Serious. You know, after this, you could go to Fat Fit Over 40. There's so much information about his book. You can get it directly through Amazon. We're actually going to be giving away, or we are now giving away, a free chapter on supplementation from my site. We'll talk more about that at the end of this hangout. But we're designing.
No, you guys are.
He and I, Dr. Osborn and I, are actually designing a workout program.
Shameless plug.
I shouldn't say I'm designing Jack anything, because it's all his understanding of science, exercise science. But
it's actually me. They just don't want to give me credit. It's all good.
The real truth is that, and Dr. Osborn's going to talk a lot more about this. The real truth is that you don't have to train with weights that frequently to build an amazing physique. Okay. Too many people believe that you need to be in the gym 7 days a week to carve out a really awesome physique, and it's completely not true. It all comes down to science. It all comes down to training intensity, and more than both of those two things combined is commitment. It's actually showing up, okay, to the gym and doing what you have to do. So
and focus.
Yeah, there you go, Dr. Farber showing it too. So with that said, I want Dr. Osborn.
Look at them abs. Damn.
You guys stop. I want Dr. Osborn to talk about it. So go ahead and answer the question about strength training and how you all tie it together.
Right, I appreciate the the plug there, Jay. Here's the deal. Most of the training programs that individuals who are watching this have been involved with work and work fine. I will tell you that I've been doing this for nearly, well, actually more than 30 years, and I've tried almost everything, as I'm sure Jay, Monica, Leonard have done. And they do work just fine, because these exercise programs are creating a novel stimulus to which the body responds. That said, in the book, I have sort of stolen, I'm not going to tell you that anything that I've come up with or that I've put down on paper is novel. But I've sort of stolen bits and pieces from various workouts that I've done, or various training protocols that I've done over the past 30 years, and created sort of a hybridized type of program, which incorporates powerlifting style training, what's called strength endurance type training, which is more of the high intensity training that many of the viewers or the readers are familiar with, I'm sure, and also incorporates some very, very garden variety, what's called steady state endurance, or cardio, if you will. I don't like that word. And it sort of hybridizes that into this formulation, or this training protocol, which really involves a 5-day per week regimen. Twice a week you are doing the heavy lifting, if you will. Midweek you're doing this sort of high intensity type of, I'll call it a CrossFit-y type of workout, except without the associated dangers, I like to think. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you're doing a steady state cardio work. Now, what this does is it allows for, I believe, ample stimulation, but it also allows for adequate rest. And that's something that's understated. I do talk about that in the book, and I basically say every 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and I know Jay and Monica do this, and I'm sure Leonard does as well, you just need to take a week off of training because the majority of us are overtrained. The premise of the workout is to train the various energy systems of the body, or the various fiber types, which are basically the same thing. We have several different types of energy systems in the body. We have several different muscle types, and the protocol incorporates the various, it stimulates those 3 energy systems, or those 3 fiber types. And there are a lot more than 3 muscle fiber types, but grossly there are 3. So on Mondays and Fridays, just to give you a basic overview, you're doing powerlifting type training. So you're using staple movements. There's none of this fancy hang from the chandelier, go on Bosu ball, do this sort of craziness, okay, the clown stuff that you see going on in CrossFit, the circus type stuff. There's none of that stuff, okay? That stuff is dangerous, it's ballistic. There's no racing, okay? You're moving slowly, but you're using heavy weight, and you're really deeply inroading the muscle in a powerlifting style type of protocol. So we use 5 basic movements: bench press, squat, overhead press, deadlift, and a pulling movement, okay, like a pull-up or a chin-up. The pulling and the chin-up movement is done on Wednesday as part of the high intensity or the steady or the strength endurance protocol, and the bench press, squat, overhead press, deadlift are split between Mondays and Fridays. And there's a heavy and a light day for each. So basically what happens is that you're training squats heavy in a 5x5 protocol every 2 weeks. The second week, you're training squats light with 3x8s. Okay, so 3 sets of 8. So what you're doing every other week is you're trying to push that 5x5 number. Say you squat 135 pounds, and I don't really care what you squat, okay? I just want you to make progression. The next week, or the next heavy day, which will be 2 weeks from then, you want to go to 140, and you want to make sure that you get 5 sets of 5 reps, okay? And that's basically how you're benchmarking. So you're not overtraining squats. You're not training squats 3 times a week. Okay, you're training squats heavy once every 2 weeks. And people may say, "Oh, that's too little. You can't do that." Well, that's a load of garbage. Okay, because you really need to give yourself adequate rest between heavy squat days if you are squatting properly. The same thing that goes with deadlift, the same thing that goes with overhead press, the same thing that goes with for bench press. Okay, so that's really your Mondays and Fridays. And again, this protocol is outlined in the book, and Jay and Monica are doing a nice job of sort of making it a little bit less cryptic, because it is a bit difficult to understand to those that are novice. And I apologize to the readers out there, but with Jay and Monica's help, it's going to be become a little bit easier. On Wednesdays, you're incorporating your pulling movement, and it's more of a fast-paced workout where you're doing rucksack walks or farmer's carries, and you're also incorporating pull-ups during that day. So that basic staple, great exercise, pull chins, whichever one you choose. I like pull-ups. They're a bit harder. That is incorporated on that day. And then on the Tuesdays and Thursdays, you're doing your sort of your garden variety steady state endurance, which is heart rate 75% of 75% of elliptical, rowing, running, whatever it is. So there's no, this is all cardio 5 days a week. I don't believe in that, okay? This is not, oh, I need to be in the gym 5 days a week lifting heavy weights, which is one of the main problems with CrossFit, in addition to the fact that they're racing through their workouts like lunatics. And on Wednesdays, you have your high intensity sort of strength endurance, which is really getting your heart rate up. You're sort of working at that lactate threshold, and it trains different fiber types than does the steady state endurance day, then does the heavy day on Monday and Friday. So you really have all the energy systems trained. You really have all three sort of fiber types trained, and there's a lot of overlap between fiber type training, but the majority of the work is of a particular fiber type. So on your heavy days, you're predominantly training those type 2B fibers, those fast twitch fibers. The steady state day, you're training those type 1 fibers. Those are those oxidative fibers. And then on the Wednesday day training, you're doing the type 2A, which are what are called oxidative glycolytic. So it's an all-encompassing training program which allows for rests, benchmarks you know where you are, you write everything down, you say, I'm benching 135 today for 5, I better get 140 the next time. And you know what? You rarely overtrain on this protocol, if ever, okay? It always presents a novel stimulus, okay? It makes you excited to work out. It keeps the boredom away. Like, as an example, my workout today, okay, I just finished, 45 minutes ago, and I was rushing to get onto this hangout. It was swim across up my lake 250 meters, take a 70-pound rucksack, walk down the block. Then we did some pull-ups and some flutter kicks. Then we walked back with 50-pound dumbbells, farmer's walk for about a third of a mile, and then swim back the 250 meters, and then 10 sandbags with 135-pound sandbag shoulders, okay? Done. It's a little bit more than a half hour. It was about 45 minutes or so. We extended it a little bit, but it's crippling, and it's great. And I will need tomorrow either to rest or to do whatever type of a steady state endurance, sort of at a relatively low heart rate, just so that I'm not the guy who's muscle bound but can't walk up a flight of stairs. You want to be able to have that physique, have that strength, be able to deadlift 500 pounds, but also you want to be able to go run a mile and a half. And I think that I've done a pretty decent job designing a program which is sort of all-encompassing. And it will only get better as it gets tweaked by Jay and Monica, because it seems like it's a little bit cryptic to people that are reading it, I think. But overall, I think I have a good. I'm sending everybody a good message. It just may not be written so great.
No, honestly, like Dr. Farber, I want you to say something in here a second, but we are tweaking it. I'm not making it better or any stretch of the imagination, but making it more clear cut. One other thing I want to say is that Dr. Osborn and I are working on Get Serious Volume 2, which is going to be an advanced strategies version, and we will have a number of workouts designed obviously around this protocol in that book, and we'll design stuff for really beginners and newbies too. But I will be putting that workout on our site soon, and honestly, like, Monica and I can already tell you guys, like, I've done everything under the sun. I know everyone, a lot of guys watching this, a lot of people watching this have done everything under the sun. This workout is so intense that Monday night, Monica and I both woke up at like 2:30 in the morning, and we're doing lightweight, mind you, too, because we just started it, but like literally our central nervous systems were like, what the hell just happened to us? So, like, as Dr. Osborn said, I mean, if you're going to change your physique, you have to stress it, okay? But you don't have to stress it in a fashion that makes people burn out or makes people get tired of going to the gym, because, I mean, we go to the gym on this workout literally at most 3 days a week, and we really don't even have to go on Wednesday if we had some place that we could do farmers carries and farmers walks. And by the way, all of these things that we're saying when we say rucksack walks or farmers carries or farmers walks or anything, if you don't know what the hell we're talking about, and a lot of you probably don't, just go on YouTube and Google the terms and you will see what it is. But a farmer's carry is grabbing 2 dumbbells in your hands and walking a certain amount of distance. The heavier the dumbbells, the harder the actual exercise. So, do you want to add anything to that, Dr. Len?
Oh no, I was thoroughly enjoying that, I have to say. I did not swim across the lake and but I did burn a significant amount of calories on the subway tonight, running away from the odor of 2 terribly homeless men. And we probably don't have that in the book, but that's a very New York thing, I have to say. And then I trekked home in the 3-degree weather, completely nude, so I would burn some extra calories in hypermetabolic state. No, I think that Brett's the whole outline is great, and as I listen to this and having trained in all different manners, and we've all done everything, the listener has to figure out what works best for them and where they are at that particular state. And I listen to this and I say, okay, when I'm ready to do that, I will do that. That's not saying I'm not in great shape, and I happen to be in the best shape of my life right now, but I've picked a workout regimen that accommodates my lifestyle in that, and I don't have an easy lifestyle. I'm up at 4:30 and I'm at the gym by 6 o'clock, but I have a very, very tight schedule. Not that most people don't, but in order to maximize for my body type, for example, I have just focused on my diet, number one. Okay, so number one that's changed my physique has been my diet. And I think I'm sort of blessed in that I trained heavy in the powerlifting and bodybuilding realm for many, many years, and now I'm more in a maintenance mode. And so for me, I have gone to a very highly cardio-centric workout. And I've been steered away from running. I started with running and it worked for me, and then Jay yelled at me every day and said, "What are you doing? You're going to ruin your joints." So then when my knees started killing me, I said, maybe Jay is onto something here. But we knew that, and I knew that, but it worked. And as you get more and more serious, you start to learn the elements and why they apply. So for me now, in particular, I have a half an hour, and so I do 30 minutes of intense cardio, which is interval training. So my heart rate fluctuates, and I set goals, whether it's ranging from 60 to 100 or 85 to 100%. But it works, and I incorporate kettlebell training, and I think kettlebells are great if you do them correctly, and I can't stress that enough. It's a full body workout for me, so I do 4 days of interval training, I do 1 or 2 days of kettlebells, and I work in weight training. But my goal has been, again, this is to meet my goal, which is to stay lean, to actually get leaner and preserve the muscle mass I have. And that being said, it's really about nutrition. So when people are out there listening, this show can apply to the serious bodybuilder, and Brett and Jay and Monica can seriously take you there. It could apply to the average listener who wants to get into great shape, and it really has an element for everyone in there. But the thing is, whoever you are and listening at the moment, you have to pick what works for you. You can't be that the 80-pound overweight guy saying, yes, tomorrow I want to look like, Jay, for example. You can get there, but it's not going to be tomorrow. You have to set realistic goals and get serious about how you're going to get there. But you need to understand what those goals are, because that's going to determine your training and your eating, and then set realistic time frame. You're not going to be, again, if you're 40 pounds overweight, you're not going to be at under 10% in a month. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
But there's no reason you can't say, hey, I can lose 2 to 4 pounds a week by doing this the right way, because before you know it, 6 months have passed and you're down a significant amount of weight. So that's my contribution.
Okay, so we got like 15 minutes left. Thanks, Dr. Leonard. We've got like 15 minutes left on the show, maybe 16, 17 minutes. And I think the last topic that we were going to discuss was a supplement protocol, and maybe we'll spend a couple minutes, but we got a lot of really awesome questions, and I really want the docs to try to answer these. So real quick, Dr. Osborn has an incredible chapter on the supplements that he uses in his anti-aging and nutritional protocol. We are giving away this chapter for free. Okay, all you have to do is go to our website. It's fabfitover40.com/supplements, and you can download that entire chapter as a PDF for free. Now, of course, we recommend you buy his book. His book is absolutely amazing. We've already sung its praises. But the chapter on supplementation, it's right there. It's laid out. It's very simple. It's very cut and dry. I actually did a blog recently last week. It's called Body Hacking Secrets, and it has his entire supplement protocol, again, laid out right there for you. But the easiest way to do is just go, again, to fabfitover40.com/supplements, and you can download a free chapter on supplementation. But real quick, Dr. Osborn, did you want to add anything else about the type of supplementation that you should be taking based on maybe age? Like if somebody's 20 versus somebody's 50, should they differ their supplementation?
Just like I always tell my patients, there are no age-specific supplements per se, as there are no age-specific exercises. Individuals come to me and they're in their 60s, their 70s, and they say, I'm too old to do the exercises that are in your book. Says who?
Right.
That's just not true. An individual that's 70 or 80 years old, they can squat. Of course they can. They can squat without weight. They can squat with the bar. Okay, it's the same thing. The same thing applies to supplements. Why? Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to thwart the aging process, if you will, which is just a degenerative disease. And we all know that aging and degenerative disease, the underpinnings of those things are oxidative stress. So these little ions that are generated as byproducts of our metabolism, of just living, are destroying cellular structures such as the cell wall, such as DNA. We all know how important those things are, right? And also chronic inflammation. So all of these diseases, be it cancer, which Dr. Farber deals with all the time, diabetes, obesity, degenerative disease of the joints, atherosclerotic disease of the heart, atherosclerotic disease of the brain. These are all inflammatory diseases. So the goal is to get a jump on these diseases as early as possible. Of course, it's never too late to start. So you can be older and jump on the bandwagon, if you will, and you should be on the exact same supplements that somebody who's 20 should be on. So I base my supplement choices on those premises. So my supplement choices are things which thwart inflammation, and also, and there's a lot of overlap, thwart the oxidative stress that is assumed by all of us by virtue of living. Unfortunately, just like gunk accumulates in a cylinder of a car, this gunk or damage accumulates within our cells and in the arterial walls, et cetera, et cetera. So the way that we're going to dampen those effects, if you will, of living is to use things like high-dose omega-3 fatty acids, okay, which have very, very potent anti-inflammatory effects and also serve as very, very potent antioxidants. I use a lot of aspirin, and I consider that a supplement. Obviously, it's non-prescription. It's accessible to everyone. I start people at relatively early ages, barring any contraindications. You can talk to your doctor about this. Any contraindications like bleeding disorders, active peptic ulcer disease, et cetera, et cetera. There's no reason why individuals in their 30s shouldn't be on aspirin. Okay, aspirin, we used to think works by thinning the blood. In actuality, it probably does not work by thinning the blood. It actually works by virtue of its anti-inflammatory effects. So supplements like that, I use a lot of resveratrol in my patients. Why? Because resveratrol is I'll call it a metformin-like substance. It dampens or it improves insulin sensitivity. It works at the level of the gene. It has, we believe, anti-cancer effects because, and again, this requires some reading and some understanding on the part of the reader or the listener. It lowers the throughput through what's called the insulin IGF-1 pathway, which is associated, and Dr. Farber can comment on this, which is associated with cancer, aging, age-related disease, atherosclerosis, diabetes. All of these diseases are reliant if you will, the genesis of these diseases is due to high throughput through what's called the insulin IGF-1 pathway, which is a growth pathway. And although we think about growth and muscle and things like that, too much growth is bad. And growth applies to not only muscle, but growth applies to cancer, growth applies to atherosclerotic disease. These are all mediated by growth factors in the body, and resveratrol tends to dampen the throughput through those, if you will, bad chemical pathways. So omega-3s, resveratrol, I use a lot of magnesium in my patients. Green teas, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer agent. I use a lot of supplements which, again, and I can name 50 of these things, okay, are anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer. I talk about curcumin in my book. Curcumin, derivative of the turmeric spice, has anti-inflammatory properties. It's thought to have be responsible for the 50% reduction in Alzheimer's disease in Indians, okay, not American Indians, but Indians. They have a 50% reduction in Alzheimer's disease relative to Americans, and it's thought to be due to spices, consumption of high doses of turmeric or cumin or curcumin, whatever you want to call it. So all patients that have Alzheimer's disease, they have what we believe to be inflammation in the brain. So curcumin dampens the inflammation, and by virtue of that reduces the incidence, we think, of Alzheimer's disease. So there are a whole host of supplements that I use, okay, but just to make it very, very easy, the supplements that I have chosen, okay, they're not cat's claw or dog's claw or things that are, you know, all over the shelves on the in these nutrition stores, most of which are garbage. They're well thought out, and they have very, very, they're addressing the underpinnings of aging and age-related disease. Again, inflammation, and oxidative stress. Somebody asked me today about some esoteric supplement. I said, forget it. I said, are you taking enough omega-3s? And he says, well, I don't take omega-3s. I said, forget, you know, this $9 million supplement and just get on something that really is going to make a dent, okay, in the aging process and in your health and longevity potentially. You have anything to add, Leonard?
No, actually, I was going to jump in about turmeric. I recommend that a lot for my patients. And, you know, it's very easy to get at any health food store, and now they have drinks that have that. And that's, I think, kind of an overlooked spice or herb, if you will, but it plays an important role. Similarly, aspirin. So I'm a big proponent of both of those. Again, barring no medical contraindications, so do not go on aspirin if you have an ulcer or any bleeding problems. But if you don't have any issues, there's no reason you can't start with aspirin. You can start with a baby aspirin, add some turmeric, and these are general things that you can start to do to supplement. You know, one of the things, you know, again, somebody once asked me, well, listen, I like to have a drink once in a while, and I know we'll probably get to alcohol in the next show, and I think it's really important, and I've learned by experience about how it impacts on your metabolism. But if you are going to have that drink 1 or 2 a week, okay, I'm not talking about 3 or 4 a night, you know, one of the things you can add as a supplement that is helpful, and again, this is not a reason to say I'm going to drink and it's going to work with my training, is to add some zinc as a supplement, and zinc in the form of picolinate in particular. But there are supplements that can help if you're going to have a little bit of cheating. You know, again, it depends on the listener and how serious they are, but supplements are very important as long as you understand what you're doing. And I can't stress enough the importance of talking with a physician. You know, I was just scrolling through a FabFit today, and there was somebody who said regarding one of the discussion threads on TRT, and they said, "Oh, this is great. I really want to go on a supplement program. I don't want to see a doctor about it, so I'm just going to take what I get out of this and, you know, whatever, approach it." And I can tell you, yes, everybody can get these agents on the black market, and when you start to mess around without the knowledge. And what I mean by without the knowledge is it's not the guy who shredded, the bodybuilder at the gym, telling you, oh, you need to take 1,000 milligrams of test weekly. You need to see somebody who understands this medically. I can't stress it enough. Yes, I was 18 at one point. I understand what it means to think you know everything. I learned just as much on the street as I did in medical school about these things. Actually, that's not correct. I learned much more on the street than I learned in medical school. And the fact that Brett and I can take this information and apply it today to incorporate it into mainstream medicine, for those people out there who say, let me get just the amount of information I need, I'm going to go to the gym and buy my test, that's not the right approach. The right approach is to, again, I like, Brett's name of the book is Get Serious, but whatever we do, and I can't stress this enough, whatever we're going to want to achieve, we need to be serious about how we're going to approach it. You can't do these things half-assed. You need to be educated. You need to do it the right way for the longevity of this. And I think what we're trying to teach people here is how to achieve these goals in a healthy way that's going to add longevity, substance, and quality to your life.
Right.
Okay, you guys, if you guys are okay, because we're right up against it, we're going to go about 10 minutes over so that we can answer questions, because we have some really good questions. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, I'll stay on it as long as I can. I'm probably good for about 4 or 5 minutes. And
okay, cool. Are you okay, Doc?
I'm good.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to just start, Scott, and then you finish. The first question that we have a lot of questions, but I'm just going to try to go through here and get the best ones. I have a question about overtraining. I think you already answered it, but let me just see here. So this guy says, I'm 51 years old. I train as hard or harder than I did when I was in my 20s. I'm on TRT with a doctor's prescription. I feel amazing. I think I am overtrained right now. What is your rule of thumb regarding when you should take time off, and what are the noticeable things to know you're overtrained?
Well, I'll jump in some generalizations, and Brett, follow me. Is one, if you already think you're overtraining, you're probably overtraining. Because nobody really feels that unless they're starting to notice some changes in probably one, fatigue and energy. So that's probably the first thing they're going to notice. Now, secondly, you start to, if you're training to get, if you're in a muscle mass training mode, you're probably going to lose muscle mass. Your body cannot keep up with your training regimen. If you're doing cardio, your energy level will be lower. I mean, they're sort of very self-implied. You think, again, the idea that you think you are overtraining, you probably are. I follow the rule of thumb of every 6 to 7 weeks to take a week off. If you are training very, very intensely, it's not a bad idea to do 4 weeks on and 1 week off. I mean, that was a Lance Armstrong, idea that he presented years and years ago, and it works. It's very hard to do, but when you do implement it, you'll feel it when you come back even stronger.
Right.
Awesome. Do you have anything to add, Dr. Osborn?
No, I think that's very, very, very well said. Most of us are overtraining. And that's why in the book it says, listen, every 6 to 8 weeks, regardless of whether or not you think you're overtraining, okay, you may feel great. Assume you are. Take the week off. I guarantee you come back stronger. And again, I'm living proof of this. Here's a quick little thing, okay, in order to assess objectively as to whether or not you are, not based upon subjective feeling. Wake up in the morning, take your pulse, okay, write it down. Do this for a couple of weeks so you have a sort of a sense of where you are, what your basal pulse is. And you're in bed, okay, you are not standing up, you're not doing anything, okay. If you start noticing, okay, that your heart rate, okay, is 10%, your resting heart rate is 10% higher than it normally is. So if it's 80 normally or 70 normally, if you're at 77 and you're saying I'm not quite feeling right, you're overtrained. Okay, I use the 10%. It's real simple to remember. Okay, if you're tachycardic, I mean, when you guys woke up the other night and had just done this, I guarantee you, your hearts were racing. Okay, yeah. I get this every once in a while after a very, very heavy deadlifting workout.
That's what it was. It was deadlifts.
Yep, I wake up in the middle of the night, my heart rate is flying, and I say, you know what? That was a major stress. I better think about waiting an extra day before I go back and train, because you're going to not only have a crappy workout and feel lousy, but you also predispose yourself to injury. Error on the side of resting more. Don't train more. We are in a more is better society. It does not apply to training. Less is more.
Here's a question to piggyback on that. When you come back after resting, do you suggest changing your workout routine?
Nope.
No.
I keep it exactly the same. And Jay and I have had discussions about this. One of the reasons why I think that the workout that's outlined in the book, and again, it's just a hybridized form of other workouts, is that you can continue to do it. There's this whole notion that you need to change things, you need to be variability, and all this, that, and the other. I think that midweek workout, okay, gives a lot of variability. You can keep the workouts fun. You can change the stimulus. You don't have to do exactly what I said. I laid out 3, 4, 5 workouts that you can do. That spices it up. That provides the variability. But I do not believe that you should be trying 17 different workout protocols per year. In other words, if you come back after 6 weeks of training, you take a week off, okay, do you need to try something different? No. I think that you should set a goal. The guys that I train with, we have index cards. My goal is to deadlift 600 pounds by this time next year, okay? And you know what? I'm going to get there, okay, by virtue of the fact that I will keep pushing and pushing despite the weeks off and things like that. I will rest appropriately. I will keep moving, okay? Because I know that I like my workout. That I like the protocol because it allows you to always have a benchmark as to where you are. And I always want to be a little bit better than I was the year before, or a lot better than I was the year before. And you're not all over the place, because otherwise you're changing 17 variables, you don't know what works, you lose track, okay? And I just think it's a lousy existence, quite frankly, and it doesn't allow for progression.
Right, I agree. I mean, we're using your program now, so I agree. I mean, we may have to change the exercises if deadlifting becomes too intense or whatever. Occasionally, I mean, not on a keep it as a staple workout, but like you said, take an extra day off. So I'm going to just jump in here, Scott, real quick, and keep asking questions. So this one's obviously great for. And by the way, Dr. Leonard had to get off, so we thank him for being on the show.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
So Dr. O, my glucose level was 83 milligrams per deciliter 2 hours after my biggest meal. It was 72 milligrams per deciliter before breakfast. Am I in a healthy range? What are my ideal numbers? I am a weight trainer, and I am 56 years old.
Right. So you said it was, I'm sorry, Jay, you said it was 200 at 2 hours?
It was 83 milligrams per deciliter after 2 hours after my biggest meal, and 72 milligrams per deciliter before breakfast.
Oh, I thought you said 200. Here's the deal with that. Okay. Basically, what you're doing is you're doing it's a good question. You're doing a glucose tolerance test. There are curves to which a normal glucose tolerance should basically fit to. So these are all available. Okay, all of these curves, okay, and there are various curves. An individual that's that has quote-unquote hypoglycemia versus somebody that's diabetic and is relatively insulin resistant versus somebody that has normal glucose tolerance. Your glucose should spike up, okay, to after a meal, and again, this is in the book, okay, and I have a chart of somebody that has normal glucose tolerance. It should spike up to a certain level, okay, and then it should come down nicely by 3 hours later, okay? It should normalize. So it's not anything to be concerned about. Actually, your glucose tolerance sounds like it's fine, and I think that that's excellent, and it's a product, or it's a testimony to the fact that you are probably walking around with a lot of muscle mass on your body, because remember, your muscle acts as a sink. But if you really want to know specifically where you fit in, there are many websites that have the normal glucose tolerance curve on them, and as long as you're not having any symptoms of hypoglycemia or anything like that, you want to be running around with as low of a glucose as possible. I mean, I've had my glucose my glucose tested, and again, I'm maxed out on metformin, and I've gotten panic phone calls from my doctor saying, "Why is your fasting glucose 60?" And I say, "I'm not dizzy. It doesn't worry me at all." So strive for low glucose and low insulin, basal insulin levels, very, very high insulin sensitivity, which means that you are pumping out just enough insulin to get your glucose down. And the way that means that you are, if you have a very, very high degree of insulin sensitivity, that means that your muscle is doing its job as an insulin sink or sump and sucking up all that glucose by virtue of the fact that you have a lot of muscle on your body, and therefore you don't need as much insulin in your body. Okay, and again, insulin is an inflammatory hormone. High insulin levels are associated with not only obesity, inflammation, cancer, Alzheimer's disease. Okay, you want to keep your insulin levels low, and you can get your insulin levels checked if you're sort of looking at me funny, and I can't see you obviously. Insulin levels should be low, low, low. Okay, in the low 2s if possible. Okay, and your sugars, your glucose tolerance test should exhibit a rapid rise and then a rapid reduction in glucose back to its normal level within 3 hours. Okay, so that's not a concern to me at all. Those numbers, actually, those numbers sound quite good. Keep the blood sugars low as possible, as long as you're not dizzy. Keep your insulin sensitivity high by stacking on the muscle, and keep your fasting blood sugars as low as possible. Like I said, as long as you're not dizzy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Scott, there's two more questions. Go ahead, though. You go.
I got a quick question. One, Doc, is most of the stuff in your book, or all of it, people can follow?
Yes, absolutely. I know I talk and I ramble and things like that, but I hope I've done an okay job in the book explaining things. It sounds complex, but it's not really that complex. It's just some very, very basic principles that an individual needs to understand in order to make an impact or a change on their health. And all of these diseases, okay, and I've said this 1,000 times, and I say it 1,000 times in the book, they're all the same. Okay, they're just on a spectrum because they have very, very common underpinnings and themes. Okay, and if you're treating one or you're trying to prevent one, you're preventing them all. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yep. And I got another question. If someone were to consult with you, do you lay out a whole action plan? I mean, is it something, or is it, I guess, if they come to you personally and want to consult with you compared to just getting the book, I mean, what's the, how much more are they going to get from you as far as working with you?
That's a good question. I work for a corporation at this point, so it's not quite as robust as I would like it to be, and ultimately probably it will be at some future date. But I basically serve as a counselor, as a coach. I check a battery of very standard endocrine metabolic tests. I put patients on supplements. And that's really how the consultation works. Somebody that's in the know, obviously like Jay, Monica, Leonard, the consultation is really going to be just sort of to get them in my books, for legal reasons, and then I can prescribe whatever I'm going to prescribe based upon an individual's needs. But for them, a consult for them is sort of a no-brainer. They really need nothing from me except really just to be in my EMR. But for individuals that are relatively novice, I just had two brothers come to me yesterday, one of whom is a former SEAL Team 6 guy. And they're very much in the know, and they came to me very, very well-informed and educated. So it was one of those types of consults where I was just making recommendations. We talked a little bit about some of the exercise protocols in the book. I put them on various hormone treatments, made some supplement recommendations, et cetera, but their consult was more of a social visit, and we were talking about this, that, and the other, as opposed to, and I fielded all their questions and whatever, esoterica they wanted me to address, I did. Mm-hmm. Just depends upon the level of knowledge. You have informed patients and you have very, very poorly informed patients. And in the context of the latter, I have to go and I have to explain things to them.
And then you'll consult with anyone, whether they're in person or over the phone, correct?
Well, the issue with consulting over the phone, I have no problem talking to individuals. I was talking to a dentist today. I don't charge anything to speak to people. They usually get in touch with me with through Facebook or through email, and I'm happy to answer questions, and I make myself available because I'm trying to,
you'll get flooded.
Get the word out there, see if I can help as many people as possible. When they come to the office, obviously it's a different story, but I'm sort of an open access, open book type guy.
Okay. And then Jay, do you have any other questions?
There was just one other question that I thought was actually kind of relevant and good if we have enough time to answer it, and it was let me just read it. It says, "Hi, and forgive me if this has been asked already, but I'm a 37-year-old male. I have symptoms of low testosterone, and actually low testosterone by blood work. I'm in the low 300s range. I would like to ask Dr. Osborn if there is a certain level of for TRT, if there's a certain milligram dosage that he recommends, and what is his thoughts on taking HGH again with a prescription legally by a doctor in combination with test."
Yeah, and that's a good question. Bang for the buck, and Jay, we've had this discussion before. I think that HGH, quite frankly, is overrated. I think that bang for the buck, in order to make the most impact in an individual from the standpoint of a psychological impact, from a standpoint of physique, from a standpoint of fatigue, from a standpoint of libido, testosterone is really where the supplemental testosterone is really where the bang for the buck is. That's really where the impact is, as opposed to HGH. And in my, I'm on TRT right now. Obviously, I've been on growth hormone as prescribed by my physician in the past, and I've never really been enamored. And I've been on it for stints to sort of give it an adequate trial. So I'm speaking from experience. As far as the first question was concerned, is there a number? The answer is that no, there's not a number. I like to bring my patients up to sort of the optimal, the high end of normal with regard to the total testosterone, and that typically is around 11 or 1200, right. And their free testosterone somewhere around 24, 25, right at pin them toward the high end of normal, not super physiologic, but right at the high end of normal. Right. But, and this is a big but, the dosing is a function of how one is feeling in combination with the number. So if somebody is doing great, they feel their libido is good, their level of muscle mass, their strength, their energy level, their brain is working well, because testosterone does work on the brain. Definitely. If they're feeling great and their total testosterone is 800 and their free testosterone is 18, I leave them alone. I'm not here to make somebody into a superhuman and tell them that they need more and more. That's just not the way I work. And if it happens to be on a low dose of testosterone, say it's 100 milligrams a week, so 0.5 of a cypionate, 200 milligram per ml, that's perfectly fine. Some of my patients are on 1 cc or 200 milligrams. It just depends upon the patient, and it takes a little bit of time to get individuals tweaked. So you have to be patient. It's not you come to the office, you get put on something, and then all of a sudden you're good. No, it doesn't work like that.
It goes back to what even Dr. Farber was saying, know thyself.
Yes, you have to. You have to.
I have one other question, which I think is kind of interesting that you sent over, Jay, was it was, what is your opinion on smartphone internet addiction and how it affects the function of your brain, which I thought was kind of interesting since you are a neurosurgeon. If there's any studies out there about over inundation, on being on phones, computers all day, blah, 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 stuff like that.
Right, and that's a good question. And the military obviously has done studies on this, because they're carrying high wattage radios, and they're putting them right next to their heads. And there is a suggestion that maybe tumors of the 8th nerve, which is the acoustic nerve, the hearing nerve, there's an slightly increased incidence in those types of tumors. Those tumors are benign. There is no, and typically easily treated if recognized early, there is no incidence between malignant brain tumors, so the brain tumors that kill you within a year, as an example, which happens to be the most common type of primary malignancy of the brain. So the tumor that comes from the brain itself, there's no increased incidence of primary malignancies of the brain with phone usage. Okay, there is not. So don't panic. That being said, I would not, if you can, hold the phone away from your head, or use a
use a corded headset.
Yeah. Yes.
What is better though, a Bluetooth or a corded headset? And that's obviously a great question.
Right. The corded headsets with the microphone with you know, which are you know, where you're keeping actually the transmitter aspect of the phone away from your head, I would think is safer. And there's a whole host of sort of like almost this cult within the anti-aging industry, if you will, who are very, very big on keeping anything that emits any type of electromagnetic radiation very, very far away from you. And there are books written on it and things like that. I think that's probably a lot of hype, quite frankly. But I would just err on the side of keeping these things away from your head, if possible, just from the standpoint of not developing an acoustic tumor, because who wants one? Nobody.
Right. Awesome. You're the best, Dr. O.
Thank you so much for staying along. Scott, do you have anything else to say? I mean, this was an amazing show.
No,
I want to know one thing. I want to know how the puppy is.
Oh my
Dude,
God,
the puppy
we have
has
to tell
been
you
literally
something.
sitting next to us
Farting the whole time.
And we have
We've been going, oh my God, is
my
that
God.
coming out of a dog? Oh my God.
Join the club.
We're doing going, this dog smells so bad.
Join the club.
What are you feeding it?
Greatest thing ever. Greatest thing ever.
So again, thanks you guys, and as always, this is about you being the best you ever.
Yeah, for
Thank you,
sure.
guys.
And, just real quick, remember, you can get a free chapter of his book, Get Serious. We're doing Get Serious Volume 2 later this year, Advanced Strategies, but you can get a free chapter of Get Serious right now by going to fabfitover40.com/supplements. So make sure that you guys go there and get it. The chapter is worth its weight in gold.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.